I am happy to be here this morning, although I regret that I have not been able to spend more time with the college and with the cadets. But as has been said before, this is a very significant day, not only for the cadets themselves, but for the country. We stand in the shadow of Bertram Aggrey Nathaniel Collins, and his legacy is not merely in his academic achievements, but especially in the application of his ideas. We remember him because of his chairmanship of 3 of the most important commissions ever convened to determine the character of Guyana's public institutions. We remember him for his co-authorship of the reports. The report which led to the establishment of the Public Service Commission, the Teaching Service Commission, and the Police Service Commission. He really is the founding, you may call the mastermind behind the establishment of these 3 commissions, all in 1969. Bertram Collins also authored the Civil Service and the Ministerial System, a text which should be required reading for all those interested in understanding the requirements of a professional public servant. Collins, as you know, attended Queen's College and studied at the University of the West Indies in Jamaica, the Sorbonne in Paris in France, and the University of Oregon in the United States. He later served in various distinguished academic institutions and positions, including lectureships at the University College of the West Indies and the University of the West Indies, the University of Guyana, and New York University. Collins employed his education, his experience, and his expertise in an effort to transform the British Guiana colonial civil service system into one that could sustain an independent nation, what would become the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Guyanese today should understand the situation that existed in this country during the colonial period. The first attempted strike by the civil service in 1961 is when the British government attempted to bring a foreign head of the post office, the Postmaster General. The next person in line was the grandfather of Nigel Hughes. He was Deputy Postmaster General. And when the British government attempted to bring a foreign Postmaster General, they said, no, this is enough, we're going to strike. And that's the first time a Guyanese was made Postmaster General. So it was that bad in 1960. But, ladies and gentlemen, at midnight on the 25th of May 1966, when we boasted of becoming independent, when we lowered that 3-colored Union Jack and hoisted our golden arrowhead for the first time, we all celebrated independence. But when Day Clean came on the 26th of May, and we looked around, we saw lots of familiar faces. The Governor General was a foreigner. The Governor of the Bank of Guyana was a foreigner. The Chief of Staff of the GDF was a foreigner. The Commissioner of Police was a foreigner. The Vice Chancellor of the University of Guyana was a foreigner. The bishops of the Anglican and Catholic churches were foreigners. Although I must say for the Anglican that he got citizenship the next day. The directors of the bauxite and sugar industries and of the banks were foreigners. Ladies and gentlemen, we could not change our country by maintaining unchanged institutions. Change, however, is not a single event. It's a continuous process. And if the public service was to change this country, this colony into a country, much more had to be done. Therefore, when I became president on Saturday, the 16th of May, I knew what I was going to do. I wasn't taken by surprise, either by the results of the election or by the prospect of running this country. On Monday, the 18th of May, 48 hours after I took the oath of office, I met the senior public servants of the ministries at the Arthur Chung Conference Center. I met my own public servants at the Ministry of the Presidency on Monday morning. On Wednesday morning, the 29th, the 20th of May, I met the public servants. And then I went on the 21st of May to what was then called the Public Service Training Division in Vlissingen Road, Vlissingen and Durban Streets, where I met Mr. Hyderali and Ms. Grogan. So within the first 5 days of being president, I had 3 encounters with public servants. At the Ministry of the Presidency, at the Arthur Chung Center, and at the Public Service Training Center itself in Vlissingen Road. So I was able to assess the situation, assess the facilities, and try to craft a way forward. I took the decision after these meetings and these visits to promote the idea of a public service training center to be called the Public Service Staff College. As fate would have it, as my mother used to tell me, God doesn't make mistakes. The Ghana Sugar Corporation had made a decision to relocate its head office from here to Lusignan. And although the Ogle campus was the object of desire of other institutions, having the president on your side had some advantages. And we were able to accept the offer of a suitable site for the college in February 2016. Today, the graduation of the college's inaugural cohort is an important landmark in the state's quest for a professional public service. It is a significant step in the personal careers of the cadets. But for the state, it's a leap forward to provide an efficient and accessible public service to all of our citizens. The decision to establish the college was not hasty. It was not whimsical or fanciful. It was calculated and deliberate. It was predicated on the need to develop a professional public service. A professional public service is essential to the efficient delivery of public services, such as public education, public health, public infrastructure, public security, public telecommunications, and of course, the public service itself. As you can see, the word public is one of my favorite words. It derives from the Latin word publicus, or publicus, meaning pertaining to or of the people. The very word republic comes from the same root, that is res publica, referring to public things, public affairs. I say these things without advice from my Latin advisor, who's not here today. The cabinet is laughing. They know who my advisor is. I don't venture into Latin without his guidance. But the word public is central to everything that we do. And the public means people. It refers to the ordinary people out there, all 750,000 of them. Guyana's development demands the existence of a public service, and public service must possess the education, they must have the motivation, and there must be the organization to enable them to provide the services our citizens need. Simply walking off the street and passing a job interview can't be enough. You can't be walking the street one day and a public servant the next day. There's got to be a transition process, as the Permanent Secretary explained. You can't walk off the street one day and fly a plane to New York the next. You have to be trained. You can't walk off the street and carry out some brain surgery the next day. You have to be trained. Similarly, you cannot deliver the quality public services this country needs by simply walking off the street one day and calling yourself a public servant the next. This is not to make life difficult for you, but this is to make life better for the public. Public servants have to work very hard. They have to be educated enough to be able to advise their ministers. They must provide their ministers with a product of organized thought and research. They must bring their experience to bear on the way the ministry is administered. The ministers may change. Here today, gone in 5 years' time, but the public servant remains. That's why we call permanent secretaries. They're not temporary secretaries. So when a minister arrives in the ministry, he has to get the best advice from his permanent secretary and from the core of public servants he finds there. So they have to be educated if they are to provide correct advice to their ministers. They have to be experienced. Training in this college, therefore, is meant to inculcate those qualities in the public servants. They must be able to comprehend the complexities of the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana and the system of public administration at all three tiers of government. How central government works, how regional administration works, how municipal and local administration works. The public servant must be familiar with the financial and administrative regulations and rules that are common at all three levels. The public servant must also comprehend the diversity of the national landscape throughout the 10 administrative regions. There's the, I don't want to call names, because we have some people who like to litigate in this country. But a very highly praised clergyman attempted to go across the Pacaraimans. He probably felt all Guyana was flat and muddy, and he was out of breath after the first bump. Guyana has a very diverse landscape, of which we are proud, but you, as public servants, you have to understand that landscape, and I'm glad that Colonel Paul related some of those experiences. The coastal beaches, like Shell Beach, the mud flats, where we get some of our best honey from the mangroves. I didn't know that. Some of the best honey comes from the mangroves. The grasslands, the intermediate savannas in the Berbice, which my Minister of Agriculture is very fond, and the Rupununi savannas. The Rupununi itself is bigger than Costa Rica. The highlands, which some of you have never seen, some of them covered with clouds. The islands of the Essequibo River, the longest river in the country, 1,000 kilometers long. The wetlands from which our national bird comes, the kanji pheasant, otherwise known as tinkinana. Our lakes, again, some of you may not have seen our beautiful lakes. The Kapui, the Mainstay Lake. Our rainforests, our rivers, many of them running from south to north. Our rapids, our beautiful waterfalls. All of this belongs to us. This is our patrimony, this is our heritage. The public servant has got to understand this. As Colonel Paul said, you can't tell somebody from Madi, come back tomorrow, come back next week. But it does happen. The public servants must understand the challenges of administering 215 indigenous communities, many of them isolated from each other. Yesterday, I think I spent about 2.5 hours to get into one community in the Pomeroon-Supinam region. Now has the longest telling in Guyana, I think, 1,440 feet. I asked them how long they think Usain Bolt would take to run down that stelling. But we have to understand that when a little community like that asks for a stelling, it isn't for glamour and for ostentation, because they will even fall off what they had before, fall in the water, because they're walking on Takuba. And many of our indigenous people, or all of the indigenous people, come from 9 ethnic groups. And many of them prefer to speak their own language. They could communicate in English for the greater part. But when you're getting technical, or as I've discovered, political, you better speak your own language. They understand you better. The public servant has to understand that we are changing the system of regional administration now. We've created 3 new towns. And it is our intention that in coming years, every region must have a capital town, so that no person will have to leave his or her region to come to Georgetown or to go to any other region to do his or her business. And I think the Minister of Business will tell you the stories of businessmen in the Rupununi who have to go to adventure in the Essequibo, in the Pomeroon-Supinam region to register their businesses. Recently, I opened the District Magistrates Court at Wisma. If you were a woman at Wisma, you wanted to collect your child support or whatever you had to collect, you had to go to Vrina Hoop. It is an absurd, an idiotic system. So we're now creating a regional system in which the resident of each region would be able to transact all of his or her business within that region. And the public servant has to understand that. Whether it's NIS, whether it's passport, whether it's incarceration, all that should be done within the region. So what I see happening is that every region would have its own aerodrome, which could be a point of entry. People can fly from Barbados into Bartica without having to go through Eugene Correa or Cherry Jagan. They can come from Trinidad and Tobago directly into Lethem as a port of entry. Every region should have its own commercial banks, its own chambers of commerce, its own hospitals, its own law courts, its own radio and television station. And this has started to happen. Our Prime Minister has opened about half a dozen radio stations already. Police and fire stations, schools, citizenship and immigration services, all of these are being decentralized. Social protection services, and civil servants have to understand that change is taking place. Everybody doesn't have to come to Georgetown anymore. Regions will be very strong. The regions will be important instruments for delivering services to the public. Cadets, graduates, public servants, providing these public services will be impossible unless the public servants themselves understand the country in which they live and appreciate the needs of the citizens whom they serve. As you're aware, we are becoming a green state, and the public service has to understand that. We want to protect our environment. Sometimes in the past, people have gone into new areas, and the first thing they do is cut down the bush. And of course, the soils are so weak that some of those areas remain arid, almost desert, because nothing grows on the sand. Sand is good for making glass, not good for agriculture. But sometimes you go to some public places in the hinterland and people cut down the bush. We have to protect the environment because our precious flora and fauna need the habitat. We're making many of our towns green. On Friday, I had a delegation from Bartica. They're thinking of replanting trees, which previous administrations had cut down. They're thinking of solid waste disposal. They're thinking of parks. They're thinking of green technology in terms of energy generation. In time to come, people, as I discussed with the Minister of Public Health on Saturday, I'm sure we won't be having plastic bottles for our water. We'll be having glass bottles which are reusable. And we'll be cutting down on plastic bags in the supermarkets. We have biodegradable, reusable bags. But one thing at a time. That's where we're heading. We must also ensure that our public servants understand the importance of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And this college, in addition to simply training cadets year after year, will be able to accommodate students and cadets from other branches of the public service, such as the Defense Force, the police services, the Foreign Service. So this could become a center for excellence in science and technology. Ladies and gentlemen, I see you start fanning already. You're overheating. Ladies and gentlemen, public servants must possess an understanding also of the values and standards of the service. These values and standards contribute to the functional competence of the public service. They foster teamwork and they promote leadership skills. A professional public servant, therefore, must evince 4 major values. The first is intelligence. He or she must possess the intellect to understand the rules and systems of the public service and must aspire to technical competence through enhanced academic qualifications and continuous training, some of which will be provided by this college, but the college must be a platform to enable you to go to other institutions of tertiary education. This is not the end, this is the beginning, not even the beginning of the end. But it is a platform from which we can engage what I call PQS, progressive qualification. So as you are promoted in the public service, your education also will be enhanced, step by step. This is just the first. The second value is integrity. You've heard the word, the concept of unbribability. Each public servant, every public servant, must be a person of integrity. And we know that the public service is not the best branch of the economy, the best paid branch of the economy. But as you can see from what has occurred over the last 30 months, the salaries of public servants have been progressively increased, and those at the lowest level have achieved over 50% increase, or nearly 50% increase over the last 30 months. And we will continue to improve the quality of or the level of pay of public servants as our means increase. And when we get richer, you get more. The third value is the value of impartiality. Now, every public servant is expected to be politically neutral and to provide the best technical advice to whichever political party is in power. Everybody is biased. Everybody is biased. Somebody may come from your church or your mandir or your masjid. Somebody may be a distant cousin who's looking for a favor. Somebody may be a political leader. But the public servant is required to act without favor, affection, or ill will towards the public in the performance of his or her duties. That is what it means to be a professional. If you are a doctor, a PPP doctor, and you see the president coming to the hospital to have his eye examined, you will give me the best examination. You can't say, boy, if this man blind, you know, he can't lead nothing, you know. If you are a professional, you make sure I leave there with 20/20 vision. That is what professionalism means, that you will give me the best service. Because that is the oath, that is the vow you took. And every person who comes before you, regardless of his or her ethnicity, regardless of the social status, you know, Guyana has big shots and little shots. You know, you don't tell a big shot, come around. You treat people with impartiality. And the fourth value I call identity. You all, I'm told by Colonel Paul, are easily identified. I suppose when you go to the minibus, people say, it's a college student. Entry into the minibus culture. Enter into. But corporate identity is very important because it not only means that even as an ordinary citizen, you feel a sense of pride and camaraderie and fellowship with other members of the service. You extend courtesy to every member of the public. You're confident in your professionalism. And that sense of identity gives you the feeling of what I call corporate solidarity. You won't let another public servant down. I don't mean that you must lie or cheat or steal for him or her. But that is why in most professions, we have professional guilds or professional organizations. The bar has a bar association, which is meant to be a watchdog of standards to prevent malfeasance. and corrupt practices among attorneys. The medical profession should have a guild which ensures that high standards of medical ethics are observed. Every profession should have some form of professional association, which is the watchdog of those standards and values. And you too, as public servants, must have, I'm not talking about unionization necessarily, I'm talking about associations which ensure that public servants who breach the rules of ethics that should prevail in the public servants are sanctioned, not necessarily by the courts, but by their peers, which sometimes is the more harsh form of sanction. When your peers, your equals, look upon you as a common or garden crook. These are the four qualities, therefore: intelligence, integrity, impartiality, and identity, which I feel are the hallmark of a professional public servant. Ladies and gentlemen, the public service is inseparable from the executive. It is the public service which must implement the directives and decisions of the cabinet and the government. Graduation from this college, therefore, is just the commencement of a process to ensure that government functions, a process to ensure that the public interest is well served. Allow me to thank the staff, lecturers and administrators who have brought you through your studies since you enlisted, since you enrolled. I'd like to congratulate you on the completion of your program. I'd like to welcome you into a very noble profession, the Guyana Public Service, and I wish you a long and satisfying career as a public servant. May God bless you and happy Christmas.